Yo, what's good?
What's up, y'all? This is Destination 180 Podcast, and this week we're going to continue our Kids in Horror with a little movie that I love and Jonne has not seen before, so I'm super excited to talk about 1976's Alice, Sweet Alice. This one is written and directed by Alfred Soule. This is one of the first slashers that was actually made. Well, it's not the first. Like I said, it's one of the first. I can't really tell you what the first one is because I don't know. Some people think it's Halloween. Some people think it's Black Christmas. But Alice, Sweet Alice comes in before both of those. So, let's get into this cast really quick. So, we have Linda Miller as Captain Spages. They kind of, throughout the movie, they say it both ways. Did you notice that? They say like Spages and Spages.
You know, I never really pay attention to their last names.
Really? I think it doesn't matter, but I think it's Spages. Then they have Mildred Clinton as Miss Chidoni, Paula Shepherd as Alice Spages, Niles McCaster as Dom or Dominic, Jane Laurie as Aunt Annie, Rudolph Wilrich, as Father Tom, Michael Hardstark, yeah, I said that right, Michael Hardstark as Detective Spina, and Alfonso De Novo as Mr. Alfonso. And I'll stop right there for now.
Okay, so the director, this was his first movie that wasn't a porno.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
And he was excommunicated from the church for making the porno, and then he created this movie that revolves around a Catholic family.
Does he have any more works?
I think he made one movie after that, but then he decided to go into set design. So he did sets for two really famous shows, and I can't think of the name right off the top of my head. But he was very heavily inspired by Alfred Hitchcock.
I can see that. It's a lot of undertones of Hitchcock under here. I don't know if you've ever seen any of his movies, but I could definitely see that.
So that creep landlord, he only did 3 movies before he died, and he was discovered working as a bouncer at a gay bar.
I think it's really funny how we just come across some of these actors. He would make a good sleaze bag. Let's put him in my movie. Or what's the conversation that you even say? Like, hey, you have a good look for my movie. I want you to play this sleazy landlord. Like, would you be... Is that a compliment?
I might be offended. Like, you think I look like a pedophile? Like, what?
Right. So, Jonne.
Yes.
Are you ready to meet me up in this queue line, girl?
Yeah, because I need to talk about this movie.
Alright.
Brooke Shields in Holy Terror. Alice was too old to play with dolls and too young to make love. Brooke Shields, as you've never seen her before. She was too beautiful to play with boys and too young to play with men. So Alice began to play with death.
She's made a repeated request that the kid see a psychiatrist.
She has a knack of making things look like accidents.
He tried to kill me!
No more dolls, no more toys. Alice only plays with bodies. It's too late to save her. A story of unnatural love and unnatural death. Brooke Shields in Holy Terror. It's too late for prayers.
My question is, you're sitting in church, you're having lovely service, the choir has sang, the pastor is about to start the program, but before they start, the kids are going to have a little Sunday school play, or I don't know what they call it these days. And it gets interrupted by a murder. How do you feel?
I'll probably be traumatized. But this isn't the first time I've witnessed somebody.
What? You witnessed somebody die in church? Hold on, wait. Do I need to press pause?
Not in church,
Oh.
but I've witnessed some. I was at a softball game and someone came out the woods and was stabbed. I don't know if they survived or not, but yeah, that was very traumatizing.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I opened Pandora's box with that one. I wasn't ready for that one. Okay,
Yeah, that
well,
was a little creepy.
Okay, let's take a little detour. Missed you.
But no, with church, yeah, I would be traumatized because the only way that I could see that happening would be like I could see it happening at a mega church, but I think at a mega church it would go unnoticed versus a smaller church. And so I see this probably happening at like a church that I grew up in because it's really small. And just how like in Alice, Sweet Alice, it was like a separate room.
Yeah.
So my church growing up had a separate room. So like I could definitely see like, and people would come, especially the pastor's office was on the other side of that door, kind of like in the movie. So I can like see that happening. It's a little creepy, but I'd be traumatized. Would you be traumatized?
Have I seen a dead body before?
I mean, I've seen dead bodies made up in the casket.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But I don't know. I'm trying to think, have I ever been in a situation where something happened close to me? Might have. I just think I'm so desensitized by things at this point that it's just like, oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think knowing me, I feel like I would probably be the person that either seen something before it happened. That's always normally me. I'm always catching something and then I'll go about my business. And then 5 minutes later, I find out that something didn't happen. I'm like, dang, I wonder if that had been me, had I moved the wrong way, or had I said something, like, would the outcome been different? But I don't know, like in church, I feel like with church, you feel like it's such a safe place. So when something like that happened.
Oh, there was a whole shooting in my current church, and it's a mega church.
And I'm not going to give his name any type of light, but we all know the other church shootings that happened some years ago. But true. But when stuff like that happens, it just makes you, I don't know, it just makes you think stuff ain't safe. Like right now, I got the shivers and I can't stop right now because it's like, if you can't go to church and be safe, where can you go? Like, no pun intended. All right. So, let's get into this ride, Jonne. When we come back, we're going to be talking Alice, Sweet Alice.
Howdy, survivors. Please keep your tips and limbs inside the vehicle and remain seated at all times. Hang on to your personal belongings, especially your minds and spines. 'Cause this here's a wild ride.
We start Alice, Sweet Alice in 1961 in Paterson, New Jersey. It opens up, wait, pause. Before we get there, let's talk about this opening scene. The first time I saw this movie, I think I was in college. And don't ask me why I was watching this movie. I think it was just one of those situations where like I was in my room, Netflix, it just happened to be on there and I just clicked on it trying to see like, what is this? So the opening scene, it's giving, I don't know, it's giving just major spooky vibes. So you have the title credits going on, is telling you like the director, all that, but all of a sudden you start to hear this whispered prayer by a woman, but it starts to get faster and faster. Then you see in the right hand corner, there's like a figure.
I think that was Brooke.
Yeah, I don't know who it's supposed to be. I think it is, like you said, marketed as Brooke, but it can be two other people too. We don't know if it's Alice. It could be somebody else.
Well, the one who was praying, I think it was Brooke.
Yeah, I'm like, I have no idea who it's supposed to be. But the prayer is getting faster and faster. Then all of a sudden, like, the figure just raises up his arms. And the music sting isn't even too dramatic. It's dramatic to get your attention for you to look at it. But this is about, I want to say this opening scene is probably like 1 minute and 30 seconds. And you're just trying to figure out, like, what are you about to get into? So that's when we get into the Spages family made up of Catherine, Karen, and Alice coming out of St. Michael Parish Girls' School. So what's happening here is Karen is about 10 years old. Oh, we shouldn't have to say it at this point, but if you haven't seen the movie, go watch the movie and come back and listen to us. Anyway, she's about to have her communion, and they're going to visit Father Tom, where he gives her his mom's crucifix.
Okay, so is the mama dating the priest? That's what I was wondering.
Now, when I first watched the movie, I thought so, but I don't think so. I just think...
Because I'm like, so why...
I think after a while it came off that way, but no.
the only reason why I think that is because it's like you're giving your mom's, it's like an heirloom.
Yeah.
And you're giving it to one parishioner out of all of them. Like, it's not just like Karen is the one who's getting baptized, not baptized, but her first communion alone. It's a bunch of other little kids too. And so why did you pick her out of all the other little kids to give an heirloom to?
Now, I'm not sure if it, like, if they're, well, I know there have been a few DVDs released, and we'll get into that at the end, but I'm not sure if that was like an abandoned plot line or something, but it wasn't a real thing. I just think, like, maybe, you know how, like, sometimes, like, you might be closer with some families than others.
Yeah.
I don't know. That is
I mean, I do get it, because, you know, in smaller churches, sometimes you do have, like, a real close relationship with your priest,
because, I mean,
pastor.
I was like that.
Yeah. But still, that was a little weird.
Yeah.
Especially since he's not married, she's not married.
Anymore.
Yes.
Okay, so as Father Tom is gifting Karen with his mom's crucifix, Alice excuses herself to go to the bathroom. Now, Alice, we're getting to know her. She's 12 years old. She's just walking around in I believe that they're in, like, I can't describe because I don't know what this is. It's a bunch of priests that stay in one house.
Yeah, I don't know what that's called.
I don't know what it's called. If anybody else wants to help us out, you know, please do. So anyway, as Alice is walking around, we do a jump cut, and it ends up turning into a jump scare where she scares Miss Tredoni.
Whole time I was trying to figure out where that mask came from.
Okay, now keep that in your head, because I'm going to clear everything up for you. You're going to feel like you had a stuffy nose, and it's all gone once I get done with you, sis.
Okay, because I know at the end, I have my notes for at the end. Because I was piecing things together, and I'm like, okay, wait. Okay, now that makes sense. No, that doesn't make sense. But, okay.
Alice scares Miss Tredoni, and as Jonne says, Alice has on this mask. Now, this mask, we're going to just go ahead and talk about it now. It's one of those, first of all, the purge needs to respect the mama. This is definitely where the inspo for that came from. So this mask is like a clear plastic mask, but it has like makeup on it. It has like the blue eyeshadow and the rouge on the cheeks. And I want to say, like, if you look super close, like in some of the famous pictures that they have for Alice, Sweet Alice, there's kind of like a gold eyeliner. But you know, at the time, in the 60s, they wore makeup like that big dramatic blue over rosy red cheeks, just the whole nine. So when you see it on the mask, and if you've seen the movie, you can imagine how unsettling that is. I mean, you guys watch the Purge movies now, so I'm pretty sure you can imagine how scary that looks, or how inhuman it looks.
It's like a doll mask, but translucent.
Yeah. So anyway, she scares Miss Tredoni to where Miss Tredoni calls her a nasty child, and I lost it. I don't know. I guess I wasn't. We supposed to be like in a church setting. I guess I just wasn't expecting her to say that to her like that. But you get the gist from this whole scene. Once Catherine finds Alice and kind of reprimands her for scaring Miss Tredoni, you kind of get the sense that Alice is jealous of Karen. And the reason for that is because, as we said, Karen's going through her first communion. Alice never got one because she was born out of wedlock.
That's so trifling.
Right. So, since she was born out of wedlock, she does not get a communion. We then find Alice sitting in the basement, tending to her shrine that has a lot of different trinkets, just like crosses and candles and different things. Soon after, she steals her sister Karen's dolls and runs off to an abandoned building. And this is what I'm talking about again. Why do these kids just be running around like this?
It was the 60s.
I don't care. The good son was in the 90s.
So, the 90s was a different time. The 90s, I'm telling you, the 90s were a different time.
It's like I understand, but I don't understand.
Like now, you actually, even in the city, when you live in the city, it's different than when you live in like the country. So it's like we're in the city, it's kind of like you just have free reign to do whatever.
I guess. I just.
But also, it's the parenting styles too. Like some parents, like my mother would never let me do that. But other people's parents.
When Alice steals Karen's dolls, and this is what I'm talking about, it's not like I steal my sister's doll and we're running around the house. Alice is running around the city. Like, they end up in an abandoned home. But before we get there, Jonne, if you notice, Alice was like playing peekaboo in the window. If you look at the window, it's a toy shop, and that's the toy shop where she gets her mask. Did you see there was a shot as they were running to the abandoned building and it shows like a picture of just two like masks, but it's the same ones that she had on earlier?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's where, but how they set it up is this movie is very clever because it cuts in so many different ways that it kind of messes with you if you don't pay attention for a split second.
So I did see the toy store mask, and I'm like, okay, cool. That's probably where she got the mask from.
Yeah.
But okay, we'll just talk about it later.
Okay, Alice leads Karen to an abandoned building where she jump scares her with not only one mask, but two. So under the one mask we just told you guys about, Alice has on another mask, and this one unnerved me a little bit because it's like an old person's face, but it's like it looked more fitted to her face than the other mask was. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, it was just something very weird about it. So she threatens Karen and tell her like, if you tell on me, I'm gonna do this to your doll and you'll never see her again. Just go home.
And she locked her in that room.
Yeah.
That's when I realized that she was psycho.
But see, this is what I'm saying, like,
right off the bat.
I don't know. I'm always the one defending people.
No, she had way too much fun locking that little girl in that room.
But see, big sisters do that though.
I get it, but at the same time, it was like the way that she did it, the force behind it, and then also she like kind of looked a little.
She did have a little smell. She was enjoying it.
Yeah, you were enjoying it a little bit too much, and that girl was traumatized.
So the girls come home, and the first thing I noticed when they got home, I don't know why I didn't notice this earlier, but I noticed their uniforms. So as I said earlier, they go to the St. Michael's Parish Girls' School, and I guess like they wear a white blouse with a navy blue skirt or jumper, but they have a yellow rain slicker, and they wear the white tights with the white shoes. Now, I went to a holiness school when I was younger, so when I seen these uniforms, I instantly thought of those days where I used to beg my mom to wear pants to school, and I always had to wear a skirt or a dress.
That bickering got on my nerves. Karen is a whole brat. It wasn't like that normal, Mom, give it back. It was like really over the top, like, it was too much for me.
Later, we go downstairs where we meet Mr. Alfonso, which is the building's landlord, and it appears, I wasn't sure if he was eating the cat food and feeding the cats, or was he feeding them human food and eating it? Okay, I guess we'll never know. Anyway, Alice comes down to hand Mr. Alfonso the rent for the month, and you kind of see how their relationship is, and you already know who this reminded me of.
She was mean.
But do you know who instantly I thought of when I seen this scene?
What's her girl's name? The
Your
first movie.
Girl, Rhoda. I was like, it's Rhoda and Leroy all over again. So Alice is down there calling him Fatso.
She said, "None of your business, Fatso," and I died.
It's the way she says it. Now, mind you, if you guys don't know, Paula Shepherd
was 19
playing a 12-year-old. And the first time I seen it, I had no idea. The second time I seen it, I think I knew, but she still didn't look 19. Now when I watch it, I can kind of...
So certain parts made sense after I looked it up. Because I didn't want to look it up until after I watched the movie.
Yeah. Now, pause. Time out. I don't tell Jonne anything. If there's ever a movie we're going to watch in the future and I know it has something I don't want her to know about, I'm not going to bring it up to her till that week. She's the type that will go research something before she sees it and ruins it for herself. And she's laughing because she knows it's true. Like, I have no time.
I will know the whole plot before I even watch the movie.
I'm like, no. Like, why would you do that? You don't want to be surprised? No element of surprise? You just have to know why.
Sometimes, like, the movie won't, like, if you look it up, it won't tell you the plot. Or I'll purposely not look for the articles that tell you the plot. But
I feel like some of these streaming services just be straight to the point telling you exactly what I didn't want to know.
So, some of them, yes. Well, actually, I got a little confused at first because with Amazon Prime, in parentheses for the year said 2016. And I'm like, did they make more than one? Yeah. That is very confusing.
We finish up with Alice and Mr. Alfonso. This scene is basically just establishing their relationship. As we said, if you've seen The Bad Seed, it's very reminding you of Rhoda and Leroy. Basically, Mr. Alfonso sees right through Alice. Everybody else thinks she's just this sweet little girl, but he ain't playing that. So we come to the church where we're getting ready for Karen's communion, and this is where we meet the characters Aunt Annie, Uncle Jim. their daughter Angela and their son Robert, who barely has anything to do in this movie at all, but it's neither here or there. So during this scene, this is where Aunt Annie kind of notices Alice isn't with Karen. She's like, where is she at? And she sends her daughter Angela to go find Alice. And when she does that, pay attention to, she gives her yellow coat. That's Angela's coat. And she says, go find Alice and bring her back or whatever. So this is where everything in this movie is kind of shot in a certain way that it wants you to pay attention to certain things.
And wants you to be confused.
Yeah, oh, yeah. So you have this shot of like Jesus with his feet on the crucifix, nailed to the crucifix, or you see like the Virgin Mary. There are some other biblical statues in here too. I'm not going to try to act like I know because I don't. But anyway, the kids are getting ready for communion. They're lined up to go in, and as they're going out to take their communion, somebody literally just comes up behind Karen and chokes her out. As they're choking her out, you just see her pulling at her neck, trying to like fight back or whatever, but you know, she dies. And as the killer is dragging her away to put her body away in a pew, we notice that we notice that Karen's veil is falling out of her pocket and is left on the ground, which later Alice finds and has for herself. So while Karen's body is being put in his pew, the killer snatches the rosary that Father Tom gave her earlier.
So at that point, I thought it was the sister, and I was like, dang, how you gonna murder your own sister in church and set the body on fire? Like,
as much as you watch true crime, you gotta ask. Really?
Like, but in church, homegirl about to have her first communion, and you just had the nerve to just ruin it.
As the communion is going on, one of the nuns, and I like this nun. This nun is a whole mood. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The one who found the body?
Yes. She finds the body. The body's burning. The pew starts like smoking, and it kind of looks like. Have you guys ever been to a Halloween party and they have like that cauldron that like just pours out? That's what it looks like. But anyway, the nun causes all this commotion, and that's when the whole church just goes crazy.
The way she screamed was so dramatic.
It was just like, but see, it's just like, I don't know, like, would I scream like that if I like?
But like, she was like, what?
I wish I could see Jonne using her like cover her face. Anyway,
this is why we need video.
In this scene, well, the following scene, we have Aunt Annie being her best dramatic. What sign do you think she is? What's her sign?
But she's dramatic.
Anyway, Aunt Annie pushes everybody out through the crowd and discovers that this is, in fact, her niece Karen in this burning pew and runs back. And as this is happening,
everybody was trying to stop her.
Yeah, like you have her husband trying to stop her. At this point, I really don't know if they knew who was in there.
No, they knew.
Or no, you're right. He was pulling her back from telling. Okay. As this scene is going on, we have it's cut with another scene of Catherine and Alice. And it's like Catherine is asking Alice, like, where's your sister? What's going on? Come on, we got to get out of here. Whole time, it's her kid that's causing all the commotion because Aunt Annie runs back into the pulpit and tells Catherine, like, Karen's dead. Like, no buffer, no oil.
Like, even all the congregation members was like, no, don't tell her. Everybody was telling her, don't tell her.
And that's what I was talking about. Like, I wouldn't even know how would I want you to tell me that.
But the way she told it, I'm like, I would never even want nobody to tell me that.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it like that. Like I said, I can't tell you how I would want it, but it's definitely not like that. So as the detectives,
wait, before that,
go ahead.
That crying that the mama did was dramatic, and that camera angle was dramatic too. Like, oh my God.
They just really laid it on thick. Whole time Alice is just standing there. So this makes it even worse when you think about Alice is like not responding to this at all.
I feel like she was trying to stop her too, because she was going to go back in there, but Alice stopped her from going in there.
Yeah. But see, it's like, why did she though?
I see, at this point in the movie, I thought Alice killed her.
Okay, so just hold on to that thought. So as the detectives are patrolling the scene, they're kind of like outside the church. we have Dom appear, which is the children's father and Catherine's ex-husband, and he shows up just as like the funeral procession is about to start. So in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, normally when somebody passes, the funeral's maybe like a week later. So you mean to tell me, even though this is your ex-wife, you mean to tell me you didn't come until the day of the funeral? Like, I know you got a wife and all, but I mean, this is your daughter. No? You don't feel me? No, you feel me?
I feel you, but at the same time, it's kind of like, because it depends. Like, if he wanted to be a part of, like, the arrangements and stuff, then yes. But then at the same time, it's like...
That's your daughter.
Yeah, but you going to spend the whole time with the dead daughter? Or...
Okay, I mean, yeah, but... Okay, I guess you're right. I can't assume. I don't know what happened.
Because it's like because it's like normally if someone dies and you're coming from out of town, you're staying with the family.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, you could have been there to spend time with your other daughter, but then there's a reason why. And you clearly see the reason why later in the movie.
I do.
I
mean, I knew that, and I said, like, I know you have a wife now, but I mean, that's your kid still. Or put it this way. Not you showing up as the funeral procession is pulling off. At least be decent and be there that morning. That's what I'm saying.
But he ain't come before for certain reasons that we see later on in the movie.
Okay, well, anyway. As Dom is making his way into the family car, Aunt Annie asks Alice to move to the other side. You know how this goes. And Alice is like, I don't want to. And Alice instantly, I'm going to say this now. I feel like they don't get along because they're alike. That's how I feel. I don't know how you see their relationship, but it just seems that Aunt Annie is the character that's just very gung-ho on not liking Alice. Like, she is just not messing with her, not feeling her in any type of way. So anytime that these two are in a room, they clash. But as you watch the movie and you pay attention to Aunt Alice, you kind of notice that she and Alice act very similar.
Yeah, and
like Aunt Annie might not be psychotic, but they kind of.
But she might be looking at her like, you're the child that ruined my sister's life.
Do you see what you're doing? You're projecting that on her.
Yeah.
It's not like you're helping. You're making the situation worse. So they argue a little bit about this little respect and disrespect issue, but ultimately Catherine steps in as she normally does and defends Alice. We cut to, I guess this is after the funeral, after the burial. We just come back. The family's back home. And so do you notice, like, Aunt Annie's, I didn't catch their last name, but Aunt Annie is like, and her family are sitting at the table, and she tells, like, her daughter to stop eating.
I didn't get that part.
Yeah, she was like, Angela, won't you stop eating? And she was like, Jim, you don't need a drink, honey.
Okay, so not the eating part, but telling the husband that he don't need a drink, that made me write down that because she was a little mean, especially when she started arguing with her husband a little bit, and I'm like, she low-key remind me of my nana just a little.
Oh, has no personal aggression here. So, this is where basically Aunt Annie is trying to make herself useful around the house. Her niece just passed, this is her sister's child. She's basically trying to stay there to help. Her version of help, I guess. Anyway.
Would be my nana trying to stay. If somebody in our house dies, she would want to stay and take over everything. I'm trying to tell you.
But see, this is okay, check this out. The way that Aunt Annie was imposing herself on her sister and trying to say, you need me, things won't be the same around the house because I know you just need somebody to be there for you, is the same way that Alice manipulates these adults in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
See? You see it now?
Now I wonder if my nana's psychotic.
Oh, no. To cut the tension in the room a little bit, Catherine excuses Alice by asking her to deliver some cake to Mr. Alfonso downstairs. Aunt Annie also invites her children to go on Alice's little errand with her. So Mr. Alfonso and Alice, once again, we get a little versus battle here. But Mr. Alfonso is basically, he didn't have to shade her like that. He talks about how he knows that obviously Karen passed, and he says it's always the beautiful ones that go. And he says something like, too bad she was the one to go. I'm like, first of all,
First of all, he nasty. He's weird. And then I got mad at the way Alice licked her finger. She ain't had to lick her finger like that.
Now, see, I was trying to figure out, when I did my research on this video, I've heard there's not a lot out there on this movie, and that kind of upsets me because I really do enjoy this movie, and I think that it deserves some deeper analysis. But we do come across some scenes where Alice encounters males, and I don't know whether it's innocent or does she know what she's doing. There was icing on her finger and she licked it off. But was she intentionally doing it that way because she was in front of Mr. Alfonso, even though clearly he's disgusting?
I think she did intentionally do it like that, because there's another point in the movie where she's alone with him and there's a specific thing that we'll get to that point. But I think she intentionally did it a couple of times. And then that also made me, when I looked up at the end of the movie and I realized that she was 19, and I'm like, okay, so some of the parts make sense, because, like, is it your age that's spilling over into the movie, into your role, or what?
Or was it meant to be?
Yeah.
Or was it like subtext? Was it supposed to come across that way and be something you only notice if you're aware of it?
Right.
So the girls then go downstairs to the basement. This part made me laugh a little bit because, remember, Robert is with them. But they're like, we don't want you with us. You gotta stay here. And it took me back. I have, don't laugh at me because I really don't know, but I have a nice amount of nieces and nephews. But my oldest one is about 2 years younger than me. And a gang of us kind of grew up together. And I remember doing that. Like, we would definitely isolate somebody out the group. First of all, it's like one of my nieces and nephews. I know you shouldn't do that, but we were like 8. We were young. Anyway, the adults are upstairs, and this is Aunt Annie, Uncle Jim, and Catherine, and they're all talking about, well, Aunt Annie is talking about how she thinks that Alice killed Karen, but of course, Catherine doesn't want to hear this, and Jim is basically being like Mr. and Mrs. Deagle from The Bad Seed, and is just trying to get his wife to be quiet because she's just starting shit, basically.
And it's another movie where I'm like, these parents are always in denial about their children, and it irks me. But I mean, I get it, but at the same time, it's just like, yo.
In the next scene, we follow Dom as he meets up with Detective Spina, and they're basically just talking about the case, trying to follow up and see if there's been any leads in Karen's murder. This is where, oh, I know what I meant by was that Karen. Did you see that photo? Okay, so before Dom goes to talk to this, I cannot say detective today for some reason. Time out. When we was watching Mikey, I kept trying to tell BJ it was a detective, and I kept saying despective, and I don't know what the fuck is going on that I cannot say detective today. Okay, time back in. At the beginning of this scene, it starts like in a camera room. Or not like a camera room, but you didn't notice that thing that just like went down and
yeah,
it was a body?
it was the homegirl face.
The autopsy picture? Yeah. I was like...
I saw that.
Yeah, because at first...
And I was just like, dang, they really gonna show the baby burned face? Like,
but see, this is the thing. I had never seen that till this recent time when I watched it. And I was like, it shook me for real. Because in my notes, I wrote was that Karen, but we found out that is Karen. Dom is meeting with Detective Spina, and they're going over the logistics of the case, trying to see if there's any leads in the murder. And Detective Spina basically gets to it. He's like, we want to talk to Alice because Alice had her veil. Alice was probably the last one to see her, and, I mean, maybe they can help. But, of course, as a parent would be, you don't want your kid to be involved in that type of stuff, or you don't want to hear that people might think your kid is the suspect. So
again, parents are always in denial.
He disregards, he declines, and he leaves. The principal then suggests that Alice... Oh, wait. After Dom leaves, the detective speaks with one of his co-workers about Alice. And this is where we kind of get, like, some subtle exposition. I kind of like the way they did it here because it wasn't forced. We basically find out that, like, Alice really is, like, bad as hell. Like, the principal...
Yeah, because the detective read her file, and then he said, this girl's nuts. And I died laughing.
But first of all, he looked at the paper for, like, 2-3 seconds.
And he said, this girl's nuts.
I'm like, dang, what did that paper say for you to say that quick?
That part, I was dying laughing. Like, how this girl could really just come out and just say this girl.
Okay. So I believe that Dom is still in the police office building. He calls Father Tom, and they're having before they get to their discussion, Miss Tredoni answers the phone. Miss Tredoni is the housekeeper from earlier, and she takes her job very seriously, let's say it that way. She does not want anybody talking to Uncle Tom right now because he's supposed to be doing work for the church, and she's busy cooking. So she wants Dom to call back, but Father Tom answers, and they go ahead and have a conversation about Alice. And Father Tom is telling Dom that they've actually taken Alice's school records. And he's like, well, I actually have needed to talk to you about Alice, but we haven't been able to really link up or whatever. Meanwhile, we have a scene with Catherine lying in Karen's bed, and you just hear like a voiceover of Karen, obviously when she was alive. So basically it's just showing you like Catherine's thinking of her child. As this scene is going on, it's interrupted by screaming and arguing that's going on by Auntie Annie and Alice. I'm not sure what the heck is happening in this kitchen, but it had something to do with a glass of milk, and Alice spilled it on the floor. Whether she did it on purpose or not.
Oh, she did. You ain't see her just go like that? She was like...
She just dropped it?
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, stuff slides out my hand.
She had that evil look on her face and was like... You know how, like, them cat videos where they're like, stop, don't, and the cat just push it,
tapping it,
and then just look at you and
cats
just...
are dicks.
Oh my gosh, I hate cats.
What I did notice is after she spilt it and her mom told her, like, back up out the way, you know, it's like she's kicking the glass.
Yeah.
I was cracking up. I'm like, the whole time she's, like, arguing her case, like, telling her mom that her aunt scared her and that she was about to hit her. And she's just kicking the glass, like, towards her aunt, like, the whole time. She goes and sits down, and this is where Aunt Annie basically... You know how you got that aunt that just kind of be all up in your business? Anytime you do something, it's just that one aunt that just gotta have her 2 cents and say what your mama should do as your punishment. This is Aunt Annie. So Aunt Annie is saying that Alice needs to go back to school and she shouldn't be here. Obviously, because her sister passed, she's taking a break from school. But they're just going back and forth. And Catherine, once again, sends Alice downstairs to give Mr. Alfonso the check. So this is where it kind of gets a little creepy. So I'm going to put out a trigger warning here. If you're, not if you, or you should be, this does have something to do with
pedophilia, nasty asses.
So there's your trigger warning. Alice goes down to Mr. Alfonso's apartment and she's giving him a check. But of course, she can't just do what she's told. She has to have a smart mouth and call him fatso and say all types of things about him.
Did you see that close up of his teeth? My God. I'm sorry.
I wonder like how many notes you have just talking about his appearance. So Alice goes ahead. She's like belittling Alfonso and she's crumpling up the check while she's giving it to him. But he goes ahead and he like grabs her arm and gets it out of her check. But go ahead.
But before that, when she's leaning up against the wall, she was being mean. She said, "What's the matter, fatty?" Stuck in the chair. I died. Like, girl. And then that's another part that I was talking about where she was giving a look. Because she was leaned up against the wall and she had that sly, seductive look on her face. And she said, "What's the matter, fatty?" Stuck in the chair.
But see, I think her acting is so good right there because it's just like butthole kids act like that though. Especially like when they know they can mess with you. But I wonder, is that just because she's older, she can relate?
And that's why I didn't... It was kind of like a catch-22 because I'm like, okay, is it, like I said before, is it the age, that fact that she was 19 and that's spilling over into the role, or it's supposed to be like that?
So as Mr. Alfonso is trying to get the check from Alice, he just starts slowly like filling her up, like to the point like he has like his face in her neck.
Oh, because he was trying to kiss her.
To where Alice snatches up his cat Diamond and basically chokes his cat out. I don't think she necessarily killed the cat.
No, she killed the cat.
Did she?
Yeah, she killed the cat.
Because he was screaming, "Don't kill her, don't kill her, I'll pay you back."
And then when she left the room, after you heard something go crack, and the cat said, "Arr!"
Yeah.
That whatever the meow cat voice sound is. And then when she left the apartment, he was yelling, "You're crazy, she killed my cat."
When I was reading the captions, he was saying, "Don't kill my cat. Don't kill Diamond." So
after she left the apartment?
Yeah, that's why I was like, so did she kill the cat or did she not? Because he was saying, "Don't kill her."
I'm pretty sure she killed that cat.
Because who knows? Crazy. Anyway, we cut back to the conversation with Father Tom and Dom, and he's basically telling him that Alice has a unique way of making things look like accidents, which is a clever way that they kind of put those two scenes together. But that's why they hadn't really said anything about Alice to Dom, because they couldn't really prove that she was the one actually doing these things. Alice goes back to her basement in the shrine, where we see more of what's in store. We see that she has a mask from earlier. She has a jar of roaches. She has Karen's doll. She has Karen's veil. And she also has, like, it's not Karen's cross, because it's not like it's not a wooden one. It was like white and red. I don't know what to call it. Anyway. This is where she comes upstairs. But if you're not paying attention, this is where it cuts. Because this is actually, which we come to find out later, this is actually Miss Tredoni walking into the building. And this is where Aunt Annie is coming downstairs, but Mrs. Tredoni is standing right at the basement and stabs Annie in the feet. But you think it's
I thought it was Alice.
Because you saw Alice, and I'm not saying you as in Jonne, I'm saying you as the viewer. You as the viewer thinks that it's Alice because you just saw Alice downstairs in that same yellow raincoat, same white tights, and you just saw the mask right next to her. Pardon?
I just want to know whose idea was it to make raincoats yellow, because it's too many movies where all these raincoats are yellow.
Well, actually, the inspiration for this movie is from another movie that was made, I'm not quite sure of the year, but it's called Don't Look Now. I know you hadn't seen it yet, but you might have heard of it.
But I'm just saying, like, period. Whose idea was it to make raincoats yellow? Like,
oh, just make them yellow in general? Because they need to be bright so you can see.
I guess.
Yeah. Like, so we can see you on the road when it's raining and it's dark.
True.
Yeah. Or, like, reflective, something like that. So, as Auntie Annie is getting stabbed, and this scene of her getting stabbed in the feet is brutal. Like, it's very, if you ever seen any Italian horror, it's very giallo, to where the blood is bright red. It's not like regular blood. So we have this scene where Aunt Annie is screaming. And also before that, Mr. Alfonso comes out and he sees what he thinks is Alice. So he's like, Alice did it. Everybody's screaming that Alice did it. But we know it's Miss Tredoni. She runs off, so we can't really prove that it's her. We get this scene outside. It's pouring rain.
Well, before that, Catherine comes flying down the steps, and I'm mad that Alfonso actually stopped her from seeing who it was.
I don't think he was trying to necessarily stop her. I think he was trying to like be like,
no, I think
your daughter Alice did it.
No, he didn't even say who did it. He literally was stopping her from going down the steps because he finally let her go through once the person had got out the door.
I will have to watch it again. I don't know.
Yeah, I looked at that and I'm like, why was he trying to stop her? Because he was standing in the doorway and watched it happen. So he was watching her get stabbed. And then as soon as Catherine comes flying down the steps, he stands in the middle of the way to block her.
Through all this commotion, Annie is screaming and she's dragging herself outside because obviously she just got stabbed in the feet and she can't walk. Dom pulls up. As they're getting Annie into the car, I'm just thinking like, wait a minute. Okay, Catherine's going to get in the car with her sister and she tells Dom to go find Alice. Why didn't you go find your daughter before you got in the car? You could have just sent them and been like, I'm going to find, not Catherine. Annie is grown.
Nah, if my sister, well, I don't have a sister. If my brothers had got stabbed and I had a little kid and I see the father pull up, yeah, I am going to tell the father, go get my child. I'm going with my brother.
No, not in this relationship. We not together. I'm going.
But that's
the child.
No, but that's your child. So you still have responsibility as a parent.
Didn't I say that earlier? And he ain't come to the funeral till homegirl's procession pulled off. Don't be a daddy now.
I don't care. My brother is bleeding.
No,
I'm going with my brother.
My brother, sister, grown as hell. She good. She ain't good, but
especially if it's Christian. Christian don't know.
But see, and this is what I'm saying though, especially because you're telling me that she doesn't know that Alice did it. So that means that there's a murderer in this bitch. I need to find my child. That's the
but
first
also,
thing.
but also, if it is a murderer, then the father needs to go because the father is more able to protect the child than if I'm the mother going to go find my child. I get
Not
murdered.
That mother strength. No. Be flipping cars out here. So Dom finds Alice downstairs, and Alice is like petrified because she thinks that she saw Karen coming for her doll, and she has the doll out. And first of all, this is the ugliest doll I have ever seen in my life. This doll has 3 heads.
Oh, it was 3?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I only saw 2. That's
so
weird.
it's one of those dolls.
3 faces.
If you've ever seen A Nightmare Before Christmas, and you know the mayor character that, like, when he's happy he has one face, when he's sad he has another face. So this is a doll just like that. When it's happy, when it cries, and when it's asleep, I think. It's like one that, like, the eyes are asleep. Because when it's sitting on Alice's little shrine, the eyes are closed. Dom is comforting Alice after she's believed to have been scared to death after seeing Karen. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Catherine is telling Father Tom that it couldn't have been Alice because Alice, I'm not sure if she was saying like she just wasn't around, or that when the incident happened, it was more than just Alice missing. So she's not understanding why people are just pinpointing Alice to be the killer. Catherine begins to ask Annie not to tell the police that it was Alice because she knows that they'll take her away, especially considering as Jim comes to comfort his wife, she tells everyone that Alice did it, which results in Alice being brought in and given a lie detector test. So during this lie detector test, we kind of get another scene of men sexualizing Alice. He asks her, does she intend to answer the questions truthfully? And you notice that, like, there's no sound or no type of movement from the monitor. But, I mean, I don't know. I've never taken a lie detector test, and I honestly don't know how it responds, because when she was answering the questions like, do you know who killed your aunt, you would hear it shake or you would hear it pick up something.
Yeah, so lie detector tests, they move when you're lying and they stay still when you're telling the truth.
And that's why when he asked her, because it moved, but she ends up passing the test. So I'm like, what was she lying about?
He said that she didn't lie about seeing Karen.
But her sister's dead.
Right. So I don't know. That was weird.
During this scene, after this scene, this is where the 2 detectives are talking about Alice's boobs. This girl is 12.
Yeah, he was basically like...
The way she looked at me, she wanted me to fill her up.
Yeah, when he went to go take off the stuff. And I literally said, what is up with the pedophilia in this movie? Like, it's disgusting.
But the thing is, men do this. Like, they literally do this. Like, Alice literally isn't. But like I said, as I mentioned earlier, Alice is giving him a look. I'm not sure what the look is, though. Is she doing that innocent child thing? Or is she starting to realize that she is becoming a woman and she knows that she can get certain things by doing certain things? Because, to be honest, when we grow up as women and we do learn that, we do start trying to flex those, I don't want to say powers, because it's not like it is a power, it's a flex, but you know, we start trying to see how far we can go with that. But anyway, I'm not saying it's right, because clearly these are grown men. Crashing their party, no pun intended, we get Alice knocking over the lie detector, being a badass, of course. We then get this little scene, and you really have to pay attention to this scene, because I didn't pay attention to it until this last viewing, and it really set a lot of things in order for me. So we have Father Joe Mistradoni, and there's another, the Monsignor. I believe I'm saying it right. If I'm not saying it right, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But they're all sitting at the table, they're having dinner, and they're looking for Father Tom because he's not here yet. So they just suspect that maybe he has some late work. So the Monsignor says to Mistradoni, can you please tell the kids to stop running around? And at first, I've seen this movie a few times, and that has never clicked in my head until now, why he says that. So make sure, keep a tab open on that. Finally, Tom shows up with Dom, and this is where Miss Tridoni positions herself perfectly to overhear their conversation, where they assume that Angela could have been possibly wearing the jacket. Catherine even makes a note talking about how Karen was a size 7, and Angela's jacket was a size 14, so there couldn't be any way possible that Alice could have confused the two. So Miss Tredoni is definitely eavesdropping, but Miss Tredoni is eavesdropping, but as you come to find out, she's the killer. So it all makes sense later, and it's going to keep... I feel like I'm sewing all the stitches from the end and the beginning of this story. We later go back to check on Alice, and we're getting this voiceover from Dr. Whitman, and it's talking about how Alice has repressed hostility, schizo personality, and is capable of extreme violent action. And it's kind of like all the while that Dr. Whitman is giving his diagnosis, you have Catherine and the whole time that Dr. Whitman is giving this diagnosis, you have Catherine and Dom banging on the door. And do you notice like the banging gets like louder and louder and harder as like she's like giving the diagnosis? Did you notice that? It kind of like messes with you a little bit. It's kind of like Scream, where in the beginning, spoilers for Scream if you haven't seen it, as old as that movie is.
Love Scream. That whole trilogy.
It's kind of like the opening scene when Drew Barrymore has the popcorn on the stove, and as the scene is ramping up, the popcorn is like getting more out of control and more crazy. So Dr. Whitman has told the parents after their morning session it's too soon to really judge Alice, because you have to really suspend your judgment until you can observe as much as you can. But she advises against leading Alice on to think that she'll be coming home anytime soon, or that she'll be coming back to her mom. So basically what the doctor is trying to say, that after everything is going on, she might have some resentment towards her mother, which of course no mom wants to hear that. She's blaming others, she as in Alice, is blaming other people for her troubles and basically deflecting and not owning up to any responsibility she should be having at this age. Dr. Whitman tells the parents that her daughter needs psychological help, even if she isn't a murderer. She also tells Catherine that Alice has begun her cycle, which obviously is a huge deal between mother. First of all, it's the way that Dr. Whitman told her for me.
She was like, why didn't your daughter disclose that she started her menses?
Dr. Whitman knew what she was doing.
She did.
Just knew that was the coup de grace. That's basically what
she
it
did.
was, okay?
Because Catherine, like I said, Catherine and all parents and all these daggone movies are always in denial about their children. And to bring the point home, Dr. Whitman was like, oh yeah, you just don't know nothing about your daughter, do you? Because you didn't know that she started her period.
They meet Alice outside where she is obviously upset. She definitely wants to leave, but she can't leave until her medical tests come back. Catherine has brought Alice a little suitcase of bags, and as Alice goes through the bag, we see that Karen's doll is inside, and Catherine kind of noticed that, like, Karen is a little put off by it. And Karen, like, tells her, she was like, well, why did you put it in there? Because you know it's not mine. And this is kind of where we get, like, I guess this is kind of like to prove to Alice that Catherine is actually in her corner, because by the end of the conversation, we have Alice running up to her mom and telling her that she doesn't want her to leave, and she wants her. We have Alice running up to her mom at the end of the scene, telling her that she wants to come home and she doesn't want her mom to leave her there alone.
Did you peep her teeth in this too? Her teeth look weird too.
Who? Alice?
Mm-hmm.
What TV was you? Oh, well, clearly, it was probably super close.
Yeah, but also it was like in one of the parts where it's like the camera was kind of like panning up a little bit, and she was talking to her parents. I'm like, well, her teeth just look like Fonzo teeth.
No, don't do her.
in that scene, it did.
Back at home, Catherine and Dom talk about the raincoat thing. Oh no, we said this already. Anyway. In the next scene, Dom gets a phone call. Oh, no. Back at home, Catherine and Dom are talking about the, how can I say this? Okay. Back at home, Catherine and Dom are talking about the incident when the phone rings, and it just appears that somebody's, like, just breathing on the phone. Once again, pre-screen. The phone rings again, and Catherine answers it, and it just seems like nobody's on the phone. Once again. I'm like, I wasn't sure if this was Miss Tredoni or Alice,
I think it was because if you peeped, the person who was on the phone had white gloves on. Yeah.
But that's what I was saying. I wasn't sure if that was like
No, I didn't
an
realize
usher
that.
glove.
No,
or
I didn't.
Was it
Nah.
like
it
a
was,
uniform?
Well, I didn't realize that it was her until the end because I didn't get the significance of showing that glove.
Oh, you know what? It makes sense because she probably was trying to see if Father Tom was there. That's probably why she called. That makes fucking sense. This is why you're here.
Yeah, it didn't make sense at the time when I was watching that scene, but it did after the fact.
Catherine and Dom in this scene, obviously they're ex-wife and husband, and you know they kind of fall into some feelings. They just lost a child,
and that's exactly why he didn't want to come until the day of the funeral.
Anyway, their little cuddle moment is ended. Well, actually, I think
they probably would have.
I think they did it.
No, I think they were about to.
I know. Julia ends up calling them, and this is. I kind of wrote that she was a B word because I'm like, you didn't ask about like Alice. You didn't ask if he was okay. The first thing you say is like, when are you coming home? Like,
is everything okay? I miss you. Did she
even ask that? I don't even think she asked him, was everything okay?
Mm-mm.
Like,
no, she did. She asked, is something wrong? Like, what's going on?
Is something wrong? That's it.
Yeah.
Of course, my daughter's
because he hasn't gone home
My
yet.
daughter's been murdered. Of course something is wrong.
Because I think the wife just expected him to go to the funeral and then go back home.
Absolutely not. Dom goes back to the detective's office where he gets a call from what seems to be a crying Angela saying that she ran away because she found Karen's cross and Auntie Annie won't let her give it back to them.
So that voice sounded more like Alice to me than it did Angela. It would make sense at this point if it was Angela because then I went back and thought about it and I'm like, she went in the basement that day with Alice. So she probably done seen the shrine and everything like that.
Right.
And I was like, so are they working together?
Mm-hmm. Dom finally spots Angela and she takes off and he chased her to what will become his demise. So we get a scene of them coming to this abandoned house. And as I said, it's very reminiscent of the movie Don't Look Now, to where it's just these big, wide, open spaces and the character looks super small. So you kind of don't know where the danger is going to come from. So eventually, as he's walking up the stairs and calling out for Angela, we get a character in a yellow raincoat and a mask coming out and stabbing him. And I believe this is where he kind of like falls to the ground. And
so dramatic.
The killer is rolling him off to the edge. And it just seems like, for some reason...
Wait, okay. So the killer stabs him on the steps first.
Mm-hmm.
And then the killer runs up the steps. So then he goes to follow the killer and it's like, Angela, da-da-da-da. And then that's when he gets hit over the head by a rock.
What gets me is the part where it's revealed that it's Miss Tredoni and the music just stops. And Dom is like, you?
Yeah.
Like,
so
he was legit shook. He was not ready.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess he thought it was Angela, but I'm like...
So after she hit him over the head with the rock, that's how she was able to tie him up.
Well, no, I understood that.
Yeah.
There's a part before...
I don't even know how the mask fell off, though.
She takes it off.
Oh.
She takes it off of herself. But before that, there's a part where she's, like, closing a door after he runs through it or something, like, where she traps him in a room. And I'm like, you should have known then that wasn't Angela. Because clearly, yes, Angela might have been a little thick mama. But Miss Tredoni is very small and skinny. There is no way you would have mistaken the two. Now, Alice and Miss Tredoni, that would have been more of a thing. But he didn't even think it was Alice. He thought it was Angela.
Of course the parents don't think it's Alice. I told you, all these parents are always in denial about their children.
Well, so Miss Tredoni is telling Dom that God wants them banished. She's basically cursing them because of their life choices, saying that Father Tom belongs to the church and you shouldn't be wasting his time with you and your family, basically is what she's saying.
That's why I also thought that she was having, not Mr. Tredoni, but Catherine had a little thing going on with the father, because why is Miss Tredoni so caught up with wanting to kill them if something not going on?
Miss Tredoni takes her shoe off her foot and proceeds to beat Dom in the mouth with the heel of her shoe because he has Father Tom's mom's rosary in his mouth, which, you know, belongs to Karen. She eventually pushes him over the edge. As she does, I never noticed until this watch that there's like a bottle sitting like this, and he lands like right on top of it. Because at first I was kind of wondering, like, considering he was tied up, it was no way he can cushion himself from the blow.
Yeah. And this, I was actually kind of, when she took off her mask, that was a plot twist for me. Because I was like, so wait a minute, she's in on it too?
You still don't get it? It's not Alice at all.
I mean,
Alice didn't kill anybody.
Well, see, and that's why I was confused at the end, because I was just like, I don't know. It was confusing. We'll talk about it when we get to the end.
Miss Chidoni runs back to the church where she's trying to, like, get rid of all the evidence of the horrible sin she just committed. She runs into the confessional, but they're only seeing children today. However, Father Tom recognizes her voice and goes ahead and talks to her, but he lets her know that she kind of lies a bit. She doesn't really say, like, outright, I killed somebody. She kind of admits to neglecting her morning prayers and getting upset with the missing Yor and kind of wishing that he was dead because he's kind of a burden to her because she is the housekeeper. But the father tells her that it's actually okay to kind of want people to be relieved of pain. But now I wasn't sure if he was misreading what she was saying. I don't know if devil's advocate is the correct term.
I think he was oblivious.
Catherine goes to visit Father Tom looking for Dom. Because remember earlier when he came into town, Father Tom let him borrow his car because he didn't have one. So he knew that they would be together, but she also knew that Dom was going to be dropping his car off and figured he'd be there. Miss Chidoni tells Catherine that she doesn't know where he is and that she's cooking. She's very busy. She has to leave now. But she says that Dom was supposed to pick her up and he didn't show up. Considering that she rode the bus, she just wants to wait because, I mean, of course, after you've taken that long bus ride, I don't want to get back on the bus and have to take you back either. Miss Chidoni offers Catherine coffee in the kitchen, and this is where we get, like, a lot of... Have you seen Silence of the Lambs?
Mm-hmm.
This scene, like, from this point through the end of the movie, it was a lot of Silence of the Lambs shots. So you get, like, a lot of close-ups, and when people are talking, you're forced to look at them and not anything else in the background. So it kind of unsettles you a little bit. Miss Chidoni confesses while cutting off a fish head, by the way. God took her first child on the day of her first communion, and she thought that God was punishing her and that God was cruel. She also learned that children pay for the sins of their parents, and that she was sent to look after the father, not Catherine. So she kind of sees this as some type of punishment that she has to deal with the missing Yor and all the fathers of the church. So this is when Father Tom comes in and he tells Catherine that Dom is dead.
When she said that, I am supposed to look after him, not you. Mm-hmm. That made me also think, okay, they are having a little whatever.
I just think it was just because he was dedicating so much time to this family in particular. I feel like if they were having a relationship, they would have showed us more of them actually alone. The scenes that we get with them alone are actually because they have to be with each other. It's not like...
well, I don't know.
Well, because we wouldn't get that scene of her and Dom making back up if her and Father Tom had something going on.
They weren't making... But they weren't making up because clearly he was just grieving and cheating on his wife.
But they have that conversation where she says, I wanted it just as much as you did too. And he agrees, but that's when it just... Julia already had ruined the mood.
I mean, because if you estrange from your... See, basically, it's makeup sex. Basically.
You putting some feelings up in here?
Yes.
Okay, I figured. I was like...
Because this has happened before. But no, at this point, when Miss Chidoni was having her whole little thing breakdown... At this point in the movie, I still thought that Alice still had something to do with it. Because in my notes, I put, so Mrs. Chidoni was a jealous one and implanted this behavior in Alice. And then her daughter died the day of her first communion too. So Alice snatched the necklace and gave it to Miss Chidoni. At this point, I was still confused. Because I was like, wait, so Alice snatched the necklace off of her and then gave it to Miss Chidoni?
So Miss Chidoni snatched it and that's how she had it.
Yeah.
But when they were fighting, Dom snatched it from Miss Chidoni's neck and ended up in his mouth. We end up at the morgue where they're discussing Dom's autopsy, and the detectives are discussing his final moments and how they thought that Angela might have been involved. The mortician calls and lets them know that there had been a cross lodged in Dom's throat belonging to Karen, which means that Alice couldn't have possibly done it, because where would she have gotten it from? So that right there automatically exits. Well, we already know Miss Trelawney did it, but that shows you that Alice had nothing to do with anything at all. Catherine doesn't want to tell Alice that Dom was killed, but Father Tom feels like she needs to, because this isn't something that should be held from a child. Although she's already suffered her parents' divorce, her sister being killed, and now her auntie thinking that she's crazy, and being in a psychiatric ward. But wait, before we get there, can we talk about, like, as this movie goes on, how Catherine's outfits just get, like, better and better? This one scene I'm talking about in particular is, like, this white two-piece that has, like, the black trim, and it, like, goes over the shoulder, and it has, like, the little hat piece. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was super, super cute. They bring Alice home finally, and this is where Mrs. Tredoni is reminiscing about her own daughter. So she's laying in a bed, and she's looking at these photos, and we see that she used to be married. We see a picture of her daughter, and this is where she gets up and she looks at herself in the mirror, and she pulls out her paper bag, and she puts the mask in and the knife, and she goes ahead and she puts the coat on.
And you see those gloves too.
Yeah, and this is when she walks out. But before she walks out, I think she makes it up at this moment that she's going to kill Catherine at this point. Because she says something about her name, but this is where she puts the coat on before she does it.
I really think she wanted to initially kill her when she was in the house and she cut off that fish head.
I do too. And I think that's why those shots, that's why I mentioned the Silence of the Lambs shots, because it makes you feel very unsettled. And the way that Miss Tredoni is just acting very cool, calm, and collected. Like,
because when she came to give her the coffee, she grabbed the knife before she even went out there and was like, "Do you want coffee?"
Mm-hmm.
So she wanted to kill her then.
As Miss Tredoni leaves the house, we see the Miss Signor peeping out of his door. And he's like, it makes sense now. Remember earlier, he told Miss Tredoni to tell the kids to stop running through the house. And that's why she was telling him there weren't any kids, because it was her the whole time. No. I was waiting for Jonne to have, like, this big moment. And no, didn't happen. It's fine.
Well, I mean, because were all those yellow jackets supposed to be for the kids?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It's part of their uniform. Karen, remember? They went on the goose chase for the doll. Karen had on one, too.
Yeah. Like, I know that because I seen the stitching. It says St. Michael's.
Mm-hmm. That was part of their uniform for when it rains or whatever.
Oh. I just thought that she had one because she lived in the house.
I mean, but that's why it was easy for her to get that outfit, because she could have been anybody. Like, I don't even think that she was trying to target, I don't think that she was trying to frame Alice. I just think that it was just a very simple get up that it could have been any of those little girls at that school, low key. If y'all just happen to blame Alice, y'all just happen to blame Alice because she's bad.
Psychotic.
So we go back to Mr. Alfonso, and this is where the movie makes another clever cut, because Alice comes in and she's wearing the same thing that we just saw Miss Tredoni in, and she puts a jar of cockroaches on top of Alfonso's belly. As she leaves, her mom catches her, but she kind of like plays it off and just says like she just came to speak to him. Because remember, she's just now coming home from the psychiatric home. They head off to Mass, but as they head off, you see Miss Tredoni running around to the back of the house as they're leaving the house. So Miss Tredoni goes upstairs and she's banging on Catherine's door. So I'm not sure if she was just going to stab her on sight.
So.
Because what if Alice answered the door?
I still think they were accomplices. Just a teeny bit.
No, Alice, I'm telling you, Alice had nothing to do with it. I'm going to clear it up at the end. Alice had touched nobody. The only thing Alice did was put those cockroaches on Mr. Alfonso's stomach, and that's it. Alice hadn't killed anybody. Miss Tredoni is knocking on Catherine's door, like fiercely banging on the door, to where it wakes up Mr. Alfonso, causing him to knock over the jar of cockroaches. Miss Tredoni goes up to the Spages' home and begins to fiercely knock on the door. Her knocking is so loud that it wakes up Mr. Alfonso as he knocks over the jar of cockroaches that is on his stomach. As he freaks out, he runs out of his apartment, and it spooks Miss Tredoni, so she runs downstairs, but she ends up running into him. So Miss miss. So Mr. Alfonso, thinking that is Alice, first of all, did you hear him call her a bitch?
Mm-hmm.
He said, Alice, you bitch.
Yep.
So he shoves the girl into the wall, but this is when the hood falls off, and I think Mr. Alfonso takes the mask off himself and sees that it's not Alice. So everybody at this point is just thrown off. It's kind of like that Mr. Krabs meme. And this is where Miss Tredoni really has no choice but to stab him. Like, she has to kill him. What is she going to do? Because at this point, they're going to put two and two together and realize that Alice really didn't kill anybody and it had been her the entire time. We get a little cut to Detective Spina hearing all the screams, and this is where he decides to go inside, and he actually sees Miss Tredoni heading out the window.
As I was saying, he was so close to catching her.
So close.
So
I mean,
close.
I feel like he still could have. Like, if you seen she was going out the door, all you had to do was run around the other way. But, I mean, I guess what they end up doing is smart. So the whole time that this scene is happening, there's a song playing in the back, and it's called Down in the Meadow. And I don't know if anybody else knows this song, but this is a song I had to learn to sing to little kids. So when I heard it, it kind of threw me off a little bit because I'm like, I don't know if this song was supposed to mean anything. I don't know. It's like you kind of have to hear it. Maybe if we can get an insert, I can insert it here or something. But you have to hear it in the context of that scene. But I wish we can get like a commentary and a director can like say like what was the meaning behind playing that particular song with that scene. We end up at Mask where we find out that there's going to be an operation to catch Miss Tredoni. Detective Spina is telling Father Tom of all these precautions that they should do, but Father Tom is like, this is during church. We got people here. I'm not trying to do all this. She's going to trust me. I know she's going to come up for communion, so we could just catch her there. But what ends up happening is as Mask goes on, we get a shot of Miss Tredoni coming into the church mixed with shots of Alice sitting in the pew. So now we definitely know it's not Alice. But we also get shots of Miss Tredoni walking. Did you see the blood was still on her shoes?
Yeah, but I'm just like, not a whole sting operation in the middle of Mass.
Sometimes you gotta do it when they least expect it.
But with the way that Miss Tredoni and Alice were looking at each other, at this point, I was still in my head thinking that they were accomplices. Because why y'all keep looking at each other like that?
I think she just looked. I think, okay. It's not I think, but I'm going to wrap this and then we'll go ahead. What happens is, as Father Tom predicted, Miss Tredoni comes up from Mass, even though she rudely pulls Angela. Poor Angela. They treat her so bad in this movie. She pulls Angela out the way and sits in her place for communion. As Father Tom tries to rush the line to get down to her, he rejects her and tells her that he can't give her communion because she's under arrest at the moment. Where she goes ahead and just says, but you gave it to that whore! Referring to Catherine.
And she just looked mad confused, like...
Yeah, like, what are you... And that's what I'm saying. Like, she's like, what did I didn't have anything to do with this. Like, what are you even talking about? So this is where Miss Tredoni turns around and thinks about it for a second, reaches in her paper bag and stabs Father Tom in the neck in front of the entire...
Which
church.
tripped me out, because, like, how you just gonna stab my man in the neck in the middle of the church, like...
In front
of the
Alice,
whole congregation.
in front of everyone. So what happens here is this is the second time a murder has happened at this church. And once again, things are going crazy. Father Tom actually falls into Miss Tredoni's arms, and she kind of, like, rocks him. I think she kind of, like, was shocked herself that she even did it. But meanwhile, what happens, as Miss Tredoni is being apprehended, we get a scene of Alice walking. I don't know where Catherine was. We get a scene of Alice walking down the church aisle, and she has Miss Tredoni's paper bag.
Catherine she ran up there.
Oh, she did?
And she was witnessing the fact that he had got
grab
stabbed.
your child.
She went up there, saw that he had stabbed, and then she was crying and being hysterical.
Grab your child. Like, this is what I'm talking about.
She was too in grief that her man just got murdered.
That's not her man, Jonne.
I'm still convinced that they had something going on. You can't tell me that they didn't have something going on.
That ain't her man, boo.
That was her man. I'm trying
Alice
to tell
is
you.
walking down the aisle. As Alice walks down the aisle, we see that she has Miss Tredoni's paper bag, which has the knife and the mask in it. And we end the movie with a shot of Alice staring straight into the camera, and that was
with the knife in her hand. And
Alice
at that point,
Alice.
I still was like, see, accomplices took the knife and put it in the bag, real slick with the two.
So see, this is what happened. They're not accomplices. Alice didn't kill anybody. Miss Chidoni did
I
all
mean,
the
you don't
killing.
have to kill anybody to be an accomplice.
Miss Chidoni did the killing, but the question now is what's going to happen to Alice. Alice is acting out because she's not getting the attention she wants. She's a product of wedlock, and at this point, everybody's making it seem like a bad thing. And everything that she does, it only seems like she only gets attention from negative attention. Well, it seems like she's only getting attention from being bad or doing things she's not supposed to be doing. So now that I've seen Miss Chidoni kill these people or person, Father Tom, and she's getting all this attention, is that going to be me? Is that going to be the same for me? Like, do I have to do this to get the attention that I want? So that's kind of how that's playing on. But Alice, the thing is, she's completely innocent. She actually is Alice, sweet Alice, but she's being molded by her.
Nah, more like
environment.
Alice, psycho Alice. Still think she's psycho.
No, leave the baby alone. You want to go to the souvenir shop with me?
Yeah.
That's fine.
So no, yeah, let's go.
It seems you survived. Well, before you go, join us in the souvenir shop.
So Alice, sweet Alice actually had a few names before. It was written under Alice, sweet Alice, but when the movie came out, for a little while it was called Communion, and then it was also branded as Holy Terror too.
But why would you even want to? Would you want to go see a movie called Communion?
That's why they changed the name, because that's exactly what they said. Also, the album art for Alice, sweet Alice, they actually have so many. So the most popular one that we get is the paper bag that has the mask peering out with the knife stabbing the doll in the back, and it kind of has the blood writing Alice, sweet Alice. The newest DVD version has a yellow background, and it kind of has like a girl on it. It's kind of like a split shot. I think this is supposed to be Brooke Shields, because as we said earlier, they really marketed this movie after Brooke Shields to sell it, because it wasn't really selling well when it first came out. So what you see is Brooke Shields. One half is her face crying blood tears, and then the other half is the knife with the reflection of the mask in it.
Well, then I think not only that, like, she made this movie before she did Blue Lagoon, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So when she got her popularity from Blue Lagoon, they started marketing it as, you know.
A few other covers, they kind of include the same variation of the paper bag one, but some of them might be just all black and have the title Holy Terror. Or there is a really cool one that I like that has a back-to-back of what you would think is Alice and Alice, but when you watch the movie, you find out it's Alice and Miss Chidoni, and their faces is kind of like they're back-to-back and they're looking at each other. So it's kind of like a I am you, you are me, weird type of science situation. Jonne, Alice, sweet Alice has Alice, sweet Alice has a rating of 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb. 83% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 4.5 on Slant Magazine. I haven't heard of that one, but whatever. On a scale of 1 to 100, what do you rate Alice, sweet Alice?
So for me, I was confused half the movie. There were a lot of plot holes for me. But at the end of the movie, I was literally confused. Like, is she the killer or not? Was the torch just handed off because she took the knife in the bag? Do we just have murder bags now? This is just what we doing? But out of all three movies that we've seen so far, this was the best. It wasn't scary, but it had the level of gore that I needed. Mm-hmm. So I gave it an 85.
Okay. For me, I've seen this movie a few times. As I said, it's one of my favorites out of the 70s era. Obviously, the first time I seen it, I was younger. I didn't get it off top, but the second time, once things started making sense, I liked it more. And of course, as I kept watching it, I always find something else to like more about it. So I'll give Alice, sweet Alice, a 89. So people, I hope you guys enjoyed this ride with us. Next week, we're gonna go back to the 90s. We're going to redeem ourselves.
The 90s.
We're going to redeem ourselves for that Good Son episode. And we're going to meet a little boy named Mikey. So, See you next time. Bye.